Just give me a moment. I'm waiting for some people to join in. I'd like if you could just share the video. I could appreciate it. Continuing my series concerning Grand Bahama and the way we're gonna develop our country. For those of you out of the Bahamas, I am C. Allen Johnson. I'm known as Critical Thinker. I am a community, social, political, civic activist. To political leadership, I'm also known as a terrorist. I'm going to continue to have a conversation concerning the economics of the Bahamas economy, more so with Grand Bahama. As you see, the topic tonight is going to be the big picture. Are you in it? So many of us that are in the Bahamas oftentimes advocate for one political party or the next. And essentially, I want to just basically put that in perspective because, you know, if you are part of a team, then you should also be able to have some benefits of being part of that team. Not just as a Bahamian, but also for those of you that are political sycophants, fanatics, supporters, whatever you want to define yourself as, who is blind to the fact that when you look at the big picture, you can't answer the question as to whether or not you're in it. And that's the question I want many of us to give us a thought today in many of the decisions our political leadership makes on a daily basis. And so, as a few more of you join in, I appreciate it if you just share the video. And essentially tonight, we're going to basically have excuse me, I'm still getting over my sore throat and my cough. So I made some tea to try to deal with that particular issue. But I'd appreciate if you share the video, let those that are not be tuned at this particular time to basically have the opportunity to join it. And essentially, what I want to do is I want to talk about the big picture. And, you know, we've had a lot of conversation over the last few days and weeks concerning this Oban issue. Not just this Oban issue, but the whole economic picture that we have been trying to accommodate in the last 10 months. But Oban takes a very strong precedent in view of promises that has been made to us pre-May 10th. Let me just put it in some perspective for you, for those of you who want to basically have an understanding where I'm coming from. On May 10th, the Progressive Liberal Party was swept out of office, giving the Free National Movement a tremendous advantage in the House of Assembly, 35 seats to the Progressive Liberal Party's 4. And I just want to take into perspective that the Free National Movement was led by an OBGYN, whose emphasis was that he has delivered 5,000 or more young people, and he's going to take the opportunity now to deliver the country. Well, I want us to also begin to measure that in pregnancy, 40 weeks is what most people would consider the ideal pregnancy period. And so you try to wonder, when was that 40th week? You know, it's pretty amazing. And then you look at some things, and I don't believe anything is a coincidence, whether in the natural world or in the spiritual world. If you would go from May 10th and count forward 40 weeks, the exact date of the 40th week is February 14th. Now, what's the date? What is significant about the date of February 14th? Well, for February 14th was the official adoption of the or the introduction of the Oban Energies into the House of Assembly. or into our mindsets. So you have to ask yourself, is this the Oban Energies who was the first child that Hubert Alexander Minnis was seeking to give birth to? 40 weeks. Keep that in mind. A lot of people may not measure the day, but you could count it. Not an extra day, not an extra hour. 40 weeks to the date Mr. Hubert Alexander Minnis introduced Oban to us. On Grand Bahama, during the election, we were made a lot of promises. We were made promises that Grand Bahama would be made into 3 sectors. Ecotourism type environment in East Grand Bahama, a digital platform for Freeport, and a cultural tourism type environment for West Grand Bahama. And there's a lot of things that's been trumpeted that this was going to be the economic savior. Grand Bahama is going to be the linchpin in the economic savior for the entire Bahamas. Well, let's go back to the February 14th and the introduction of Oban Energies into the picture for Grand Bahama. For those who may not be familiar with actually oil refinery, we do have oil refinery in Grand Bahama. It has not been a excuse me again, it has not been a pleasant experience for Grand Bahamians. More so for the residents of Lewis Yard, Pinders Point, Mactan, Hunters, and Hawksbill. There's a tremendous increase in cancer rates, contamination of the water supply, probably hundreds of thousands, if not maybe, nobody knows the extent of oil in the ground, contaminants from the previous oil refinery, and birth defects, you name it. It's just in fact, many of you may not even realize that you've spent millions of dollars in medical expenses on behalf of these individuals in trying to make their life comfortable or treat them. So everything, and the point I make in saying that is that everything in the Bahamas is interconnected, directly or indirectly. You might say, no, what do people in Hunters, Louisiana, Pinders Point have to do with me? Well, guess what? You are included in that picture when it's time for us to pay the cost to facilitate the damages done by the previous oil refinery. Now we're talking about Oban Energies and moving into East Grand Bahama, and anyone that does any type of rudimentary research can show that it will be the end of life, as to quote Joseph Darwell, the end of life as we know it on Grand Bahama and maybe throughout the Bahamas. Grand Bahama serves as one of the second largest freshwater supply in the Bahamas. And so for those of you in New Providence, where the majority of our population live, that should be a very awakening call for you. Considering that you almost for dozens of years imported water from the largest freshwater supply that we have, and that is in Andros. And so, you could basically take comparatively how the decrease in available of water in the Bahamas would be affected when we open up Oban will affect us. Now, in case you guys don't know, water is the basis of life. And then if you do a little research, you will see that there's 2 things the world one primary thing the world is running out, and I say that's fresh water supply. In fact, water can be to some the new oil. If you look at the second thing, and I've talked about that, is the world is also running out of sand. But we had to talk more specifically of the big picture. Can you see yourself in it? And so the reason I ask that question is that you have to ask yourself, in this Oban Energies debacle, can you see yourself in it? Do you see your daughters, your sons, your grandchildren, your nephew, your niece, your parents? Can you see them in it? Where do you see them in it? Do you see them as being employed? One of the lucky individuals that will be the 250 people that will be hired 12 years from now. And for those of you who don't know, the storage facility, oil refinery, will be finished in 12 years. And so this whole concept of, you'll have 600 jobs, just divide 600 by 12, and that'll give you a better idea of exactly how much jobs you are talking about. So you're talking about a little over 120 jobs on average per year, or if they cumulatively over 12 years, they would have said we've created 600 positions, and that's 600 full-time construction positions. When Oban is finished in the multi-billion-dollar refinery, there will be at maximum 250 individuals that is hired. If you even take into the fact that Vopak that is in existence right now, I think they got about 160 or 170 people maximum at that facility working with them now, and that includes the foreigners. And so the key to that then is in 12 years, you're also being told that you would have to basically demonstrate that you have the experience to work in a refinery. And we simply have to ask ourselves, considering when Vopak Sense has been closed, BORCO, as most of us know it, how many of those even have remote experience are still alive to do it? And how many preparations being made to give yourself the experience to work in an oil type of refinery? How many Bahamians do we know around right now that is qualified to hold the positions in an oil refinery? Keeping also that you also have the enterprise bill, where, in case you don't know it, guys, this comes under an enterprise zone very easily. And should they not be able to find Bahamians to step up to, who have previous experience in building oil refineries, that's another thing. So if you don't have experience in building an oil refinery, ask yourself, in this big picture, am I in it? A lot of times you have the political fanatics that will be on social media spreading it, but nobody wants anything, but no one can seem to bring the information. Before we continue with the big picture, I want you to jump to the end. Consider the life of an oil refinery. 20 years, 30 years? Then ask yourself, what is the 90 years for? And I want you to pay attention, because you are in this big picture, in this oil refinery debacle. In the Oban Energy's oil refinery, let's put the end of life of this refinery of 25 years or so before technology advanced and the need to. And the fact that there can be nothing to stop this oil refinery, there's nothing that can stop this oil refinery, even if the EIA, their environmental impact assessment, comes back and says that this will destroy the environment. They'll just say, okay, let's see what is the degree of the destruction we'll have. So you could negotiate. You can negotiate from 100. You can negotiate down to maybe 90% of the environment being destroyed. And I think our leadership believes that's a good deal, to be able to, negotiate 90% of the environment being destroyed rather than 100%. So you get to brag that you save 10% of the environment. Kind of reminds me of when I had a discussion with Bahama Rock, the managing director, whatever he was at the time, Mr. Reed, at a town meeting in 8 Mile Rock, concerning destruction of the water table and what are we to do with this 80-foot hole that they're digging, calling a harbor, and also when they cross over the highway, which they were seeking to do. On tape, right on social media, on YouTube, he answered the question for me. He said, use the hole and the destruction we leave behind as a lesson as to what not to do. That is a foreign investor from Bahama Rock that is still currently here, destroying the mangroves here in Freeport, destroying the water table. And so essentially, Oban Industry is just seeking to finish what Bahama Rock has been doing in the West. Oban Energy wants to do in the East. The big picture. Are you in it? So are you part of that qualified construction team that will be building the refinery? Someone in your family, friends, family, cousins, aunties? The big picture. See, when you take a picture and you look at it, the first thing most people do is try to find themselves in the picture. And so we have to ask ourselves, when we begin to think of ourselves, our family, and the Bahamas as a whole, are we in this picture? And the answer is no. Clearly not if you want to destroy the second largest water supply in the Bahamas, fresh water supply in the Bahamas. Remember, the Bahamas have not even reached its growth potential. So fresh water becomes an integral part of our national development strategy, but we are seeking to contaminate it. We also have the second largest corpus in the area in the Bahamas on Grand Bahama. We also have the second largest mangrove in the Bahamas. We have direct access to 3 national parks that we are seeking to preserve based on international standards to protect the environment. East Grand Bahama, and the reason why, I want you to consider now, the reason why Dr. Hubert Minnis made mention of East Grand Bahama becoming an eco district. And you don't just randomly choose an area. and say, oh, you'll make it an echo. There has to be some qualities for you to declare that East Grand Bahama will become a world-class ecotourism destination. That would mean that he must have recognized the assets that we had there in East Grand Bahama. But now we are moving to put an oil refinery, changing life as we know it, and the total ecosystem of there, from the fisheries. We're also thinking about digging a marina. Not thinking, they're putting in a harbor, which will then cut into the reefs and other natural preserves in those national parks and affect them in East Grand Bahama. And the big question is, as Bahamians, are we in the big picture? I get the answer for that is no. See, but we have to understand also too, and I hope many of you are paying attention as to how Oban became part of this. And the part of it really is an expression that you can call the big lie, the big lie. And the big lie is how Oban Industries, Oban Energies, I keep using the word industries, came into this whole picture. And the way it came into the picture, it began with a lie when the Free National Movement won in May of 2017. And the big picture of it is that the Free National Movement had a visit, or was about to experience a visit, from a scheduled visit from the credit rating agencies, including the IMF, S&P, and Moody's. And, you know, in spite of what they promoted on the campaign trail, it has now become apparent that they have no idea, at least they have not expressed it yet, on to do the things that they said they were intending on doing. So what they did was they ran, in my opinion, they ran to the junk pile of whatever interests that was expressed by others in the cabinet office. And going to the file, they saw that Oban Industry Oban Energies, I keep using the word industry, Oban Energies was one of the best ways to BS the credit agencies by putting this out in the public domain that this multi-billion-dollar injection into the economy would be a way to stall or starve off the downgrade that would have been expected from them, because essentially they did not have a plan to present to whether it be S&P, Moody's, or the IMF. So they quickly scrapped together this plan. And the reason you know I'm correcting what I'm saying, you only need to go to the September Central Bank report. You know, a lot of people think this Oban issue jumped in on the 40th week. This was being birthed. This was, you remember we said from May 14th? For 40 weeks, this has been maturing inside the cabinet office. And February 14th was just simply the birth date, the date of birth for this Oban Energies debacle. And so what they did was, you could go and read, and I invite you to go to the Central Bank website and read this September quarterly report, where Oban Industries was front and center as part of our economic development plan. And I believe that as they began to do some research, some parasites that may be in the cabinet, but definitely within our community, the regular players saw an opportunity to basically use a confidence man to basically bring this forth, and in turn they plan on usurping him or somehow doing whatever. Because you'd have to be crazy to expect the giveaway that we did, 90 years of 100% tax-free concessions. They don't pay a dime. See, don't give me the story that, oh, you're gonna make contribution to the national insurance. You're making contribution because it's a law as part of a retirement regime for the workers. So you're not making any extraordinary contribution to the economy. That is for those individuals who, should they be fortunate enough to work for this destructive machinery, in 30, 40, 50 years, to be able to go and say, oh, I came to get that retirement benefits now that I'm retired, if you survive the cancers and other things that will occur in the area. So there's no real economic insertion in the economy about national insurance. They don't pay any taxes, no VAT, no income tax, no export tax. And it's amazing that they actually asked for exemption from income tax when we had no exemption. The government of the Bahamas says actually have to create new laws just for Oban Industries to exist. They have to go, can you imagine this, right? You're going to go and change the the law for industries just for this company. Just change the law and write this company in for the next 90 years. Then they're going to in some other laws. Why would you'd have to then ask, there have to be a state of stupor that has descended not only on the House of in cabinet, but it must have descended across our entire civil service, including the Attorney General Office, of the Ministry of Investments, the police department, our National Security Department, because all of these individuals are involved with this OBAN. Let me give you the 5 ministers that's involved with this OBAN. First of all, the father of this baby is Mr. Brent Simonet, Ministry of Finance and Investments. He is the father, the biologic DNA father. These other stepfathers stepped in, became godfathers or whatever you want to call them, and godmothers to this child. But this was birthed in the Ministry of Investments and Financial Services. So Brent Simonet, this is your baby. You accept responsibility for helping prepare this, your office prepare this, whatever. Then you had the Ministry of Finance, because somewhere around in June, if you also read the newspapers in the Tribune, November 2015, they laid out, Oban Energies laid out that they only met with 2 individuals or 2 entities in the Bahamas, leading up to this announcement in September. And that is, they said they met with the Bahamas Investment Authority. And then singularly, they said they met with the Minister of Finance, and that's Mr. Honorable K. Peter Turnquest. So he knew from June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February about this pregnancy, this birth that was about to happen. He knew about the pregnancy because they very specifically named him as individuals that they presented as saying that they had they showed the financial way-how or whatever ability to him. And so you then had these so-called individuals that sought the benefit, and you had the law firms, the influence through the family, friends, lovers regime, the law firms that attach themselves. You have the public relations firm that's attached themselves to this that goes straight into the Senate. Sitting right in the Senate is the public relations firm. And you then have the mining companies, the lawyer, the legal authority, the law firms that, again, comes right back into this government, a free national movement, former member of parliaments and senators and etc. This is directly involved with this whole OBAN deal that sought to destroy Grand Bahama as you know it, in spite of the promises of creating a green, pristine environment for technology, culture, and ecotourism. And so this is a very contaminated and corrupt deal. This is what Rodney McCarthy said, gangsterism. This is gangsterism in the seat of the cabinet. So here we have Brent Simonet, that this is his baby that he brought forward. Then you have Mr. K. Peter Turnquest. Then you have the Minister of National Security. And it's his job, Marvin Dames, the Honorable Marvin Dames, it's his job to basically vet, I guess, any type of major investors or whatever it is that's coming into the country. As you can see with the players, Mr. Duper and Mr. Krieger, and now the new players in this involved, in case you guys don't know, the company has been reorganized, and Krieger and Duper, who signed these documents, supposedly have been removed as directors or any associating with Oban Energies. You know, if I was to give you a story concerning the changes of Oban Energies, in fact, I think I'll add that to the end. But going back to Marvin Dames, so this is also Marvin Dames. So you have K. Peter Turnquest, you have Brent Simonet, the father, and you have Marvin Dames. So now what you have to then look at is the Attorney General Office, which is the Senator, the Honorable Carl Bethel. Because it's the Attorney General Office to basically look at and vet these contracts to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and it represent exactly what is it that they are trying to achieve between the government and the investor. And so those 4 ministers sit in the cabinet. But ultimately it comes down to the 5th person, and that's the key person in this whole saga, and that's the Prime Minister. He was the one that introduced this to the House of Assembly, And he was the one that brought the heads of agreement and tabled it on the House of Assembly. And that's where we began to see the truth. And we saw the whole things of conflict that's going in. And it brings us back to the question, in the big picture of Oban Energies, who do you see in it? I see those five. And so we begin to question the signature on the document brought by Dr. Minnis into the House of Assembly. And that document is his. You must own the document when you table it. And we saw so many irregularities with this document, from the fact that it looked like it contained a facsimile signature for a person who signed on the 19th on a date that they were not in the Bahamas. We saw no witness on the page that was necessary. We saw no counter initials to the bottom of the page for where the signatures were. We did not see the government seal on the document for where the signatures were. And the signature, when zoomed in, appears to be beneath the print, which is an amazing feat to sign below the line on the page. It's just so much different irregularities. And if you want to take a little further depth, you can see where the lineup of the writings, if you use a little grid type environment with a photo editor, you'll see that the lining doesn't line up, and there's some other irregularities about it. So in my opinion, that particular page of that document is a scam, is a fraud, is an invented piece of information. And the easiest way for me, and I would love to be wrong in this, and the easiest way for me to be wrong in this is for the Prime Minister to bring the original documents that both Mr. Gupta and Mr. Krieger signed, along with the witnesses, along with the government seal, and the evidence that Mr. Gupta or Supta, whatever his name is, was in the Bahamas on those particular days. I would only assume that something as the largest heads of agreement being signed, even when Mr. Gupta was, Sapta, whatever his name was in the Bahamas, I would assume that you would definitely have taken pictures and videos and everything. And that's another thing. When you say, look at the big picture, Dr. Minnis, ever since May 10th, on his page, almost every event that we're aware of that he's involved with, it has been streamed, it's been recorded, including this event. Everything is streamed and recorded except for when Sapta, Gupta, or whatever his name is, like I can't get the pronunciation right, when he signed that document. That's the only thing that's missing out of Dr. Minnis' streaming life. It was not deleted. It was never there. And I put to you that he was never in the Bahamas. And his very letter afterwards told you that he was not in the Bahamas. When he sought to explain to the government that here's why I had somebody fake sign on my behalf. And you'd have to then ask yourself, was the government not aware of this? Where was Mr. Sapna in the big picture? And so this whole picture becomes clouded. And we have to ask ourselves, where are we in the big picture with this whole Oban Energies Grand Bahamas deal? And so we have to then come to the economic development of Grand Bahama. This is a bad deal that cannot end nice. I don't see it ending nice for us if it's built. I don't see it ending nice for the Free National Movement when it dies. And I think this will die, and it should die a natural death. All of us who are aware of Bahamas should be aware that, we have to consider that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children. What type of country would we be if we leave a $50 billion cleanup bill, and an inability to restore the environment if we allow this to happen? Nowhere in this economic development picture or anything has been mentioned the destruction and decommissioning of this refinery. None. No conversation about it. Because the refinery eventually has to be decommissioned. And we have to just look at most of the refinery sites around the world, especially in non-first world country, have been declared environmental disaster zones. Even in the US, they're spending billions of dollars trying to reclaim the areas and have a restoration of areas that's been affected by refinery. That's why there's no major refinery being built in the US, I think maybe in 19, 20 years. So why are you choosing the Bahamas? Why would you not do it right in Florida? The reason why you won't do it in Florida is because you would not get it approved because of the environmental effect. And I'm sure Florida must be concerned because we only are a few miles away from Florida, and the winds will most likely take this towards them, and the way the water flows, we will definitely have some effect on them. And the question is, where do we see ourselves in this picture? In 12 years, there'll be 250 jobs. We have people in Grand Bahama losing their homes, losing their cars. We have the garage, the bazaar as a housing regime right now, abandoned buildings where people are using, repossessed homes. We have thousands of homes that are still damaged from 2004. Where is Grand Bahama in the big picture of the Bahamas? Can you imagine that people are still suffering from the effects of the double hurricane hit of 2005, where we have subsequent hurricanes that has hit us since then, and we're still recovering? That figure they give you of $100 million, that must be just for West End. It cannot be reasonably for the entire Bahamas. And so we have to consider, where are we in the big picture of national development of our country? Every single year, billions of dollars is made in and through the Bahamas, tens of billions of dollars. And the question is, where are we in that big picture? And so the question is that we have ships that use our Southwest Passage. Billions of dollars of international commerce occurs within our borders, whether it be the transshipment of oil, the goods and service to America, the lightering of oil in the Bahamas, the shifting of goods and stuff from container in our container ports. But where is the Bahamian in the picture? Just look at the picture. Do you see yourself? If you see yourself, all of the economic opportunities and activities in the Bahamas did not concern you then and still not concern you now. So we have to demand that any pictures taken from this point on the economic opportunities within the Bahamas must include all of us. You would be a fool if you accept the whole concept, the day for me, tomorrow for you. Can you imagine 8 of us sitting at a table and they deliver a pizza with 8 slices, and I sit there and say, oh, today all is for me, and the 7 of you must starve, and the next day somebody else get it and the 7 of us must just sit there empty? Wouldn't it make more sense that each of us eat a slice of pizza today, tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day? So we don't need the today all for me, tomorrow all for you type environment. Won't after 8 days, all of us still sitting at the table will have an equal amount of equity or enjoyment of that pizza? That's where the Bahamas should be. Don't get fooled for the GDP and all of these different numbers. And so here it is that for at least for 2015 to 20 years, we have sat here in Grand Bahama and suffered the catastrophic management of the Grand Bahama Port Authority by either inept or incapable individuals. Ask yourself, what has the Grand Bahama produced in the last 15 years besides pain, suffering, and separation? When I say separation, I'm talking about from your homes, your car for service fees and the likes, and your money. Separation from the money from the Grand Bahama Power Company. What have they produced except for pain and suffering? Can't you see you're not in the big picture? You're not in it. So what happens then is that we have to now move towards a more directed conversation as to what is it that we want for our island and our Bahamas as a whole. We're going to have a conversation continuously on Grand Bahama and the potential that it has. But clearly, the Grand Bahama Port Authority is a detriment to the development of Freeport. And don't let anyone give you the whole garbage about the bonded license that some of you may enjoy and the bonded gas and goods. All you have to do is look at the CEB that the government has given, has passed, and also for Assembly for Foreigners. Look at the things that the Progressive Liberal Party put in effect for East and West Grand Bahama. The government can give you individually or collectively the same benefits that you get from the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement without giving the Grand Bahama Port Authority $150 million a year in taxes. In fact, from since May 10th to now, all you have to do is just take $2 million a week at minimum. And that is what we have allowed the Grand Bahama Port Authority and associated companies, including Hutchison Whampoa, to not pay into the Treasury as the Free National Movement dilly and dally and bring us this poison called Oban Energies. Yes, $2 million a week. That's the benefits to the Grand Bahama Port Authority for not enforcing the tenets of which was expected from the Hawks-Picking Agreement from August of 1990. $2 million a week. That's the benefits they get to inflict pain and suffering on you in Freeport and Grand Bahama as a whole. They are gifted for giving $2 million a week at minimum. And so the question is, how many $2 million a week have passed? What is the purpose of the Grand Bahama Port Authority? You would see these guys run around, but they're doing something and they open up small businesses. Their job is to stimulate economic development in the city of Freeport, and by extension for some things that we've given them for Grand Bahama. You can't name one industry they created. 25 years into the digital revolution, we've just passed the 25-year stage, and you can't find one technical company on Grand Bahama in spite of the infrastructure. Because those within the Port Authority have no interest in you. You are not a part of their big picture. You're not a part of it. There's no jobs for you. There's no ownership for you. There's no participation for you. If there was, they would have prepared a strategy and presented to you so you can see how you could be included in that picture. Show us the strategy, the plan, or whatever for Grand Bahama. All you get is marketing with that piece of whatever you want to call it called ZNS. You know what it is? It's a public relations firm called ZNS. It's definitely not a news agency, because repeating what the ministers and other people say is not news. It is actually public relations or marketing. And so essentially, and advertising, because they just sometimes say, oh, we're going to be doing this and we're going to be doing that. You know, when you see the Port Authority, with the benefits supposed to be almost $1 billion company in assets and runaround, talking about, oh, we have somebody, remember the big thing for years they marketed about businesses opening in the bazaar? Oh, these people are showing economic confidence in the Bahamas because they were able to round up $5,000 and open up a store in the bazaar. Every single one of those stores are now closed. The Port Authority for Business Economic Development is batting negative 100%. 100% failures. So the question is, what purpose do they serve? The only purpose they serve is to extract service fees, exorbitant fees for you, so you can have the illusion of some benefits of bonding. Go to the government and get it all without paying any type of fees. The government is doing it for East and West Grand Bahama. So what this is about? Where's your 7.5% in the Grand Bahama Port Authority? See, essentially, the continuation of delaying the implementation of these fees is to hide the corruption until these guys all die off. It's corrupted. We have a corrupted purpose. We don't know where our 7.5% in the Grand Bahama Port Authority is. It's definitely not where it's supposed to be. If any disclosure is supposed to happen in the House of Assembly, every 2 years, the Minister for Freeport, yes, not the Minister for Grand Bahama, the Minister for Freeport is supposed to table an audited report in the House of Assembly every 2 years. The Minister for Freeport. We've had a couple of ministers for Freeport, way before we even had ministers for Grand Bahama. The first minister for Freeport was the Honorable Lyndon O'Pinley, followed by Hubert Alexander Ingram, followed by David Thompson, back to Hubert Alexander Ingram, back to Perry Christie, back to Hubert Alexander Ingram, back to Perry Christie, now in the hands of Mr. Hubert Minnis. And they're supposed to basically table an audit report. We have never had it. We don't know where our 7.5% is. But secondly, one of the things that you may not be aware of, and are you in the big picture, is that not by not initiating, making sure these concessions fall away as expected in 1990, you don't have to basically create a land registry. And you have a land registry as you begin to transition from the Grand Bahama Port Authority as part of that major regime. And you want to know why they don't want a land registry in Freeport or in the Bahamas? Because you would have to show land title histories open to the public. Then you would really be upset to know where your 3 million acres disappeared to, or how many of these islands and these thousands of acres on the outer islands was transferred without your permission. You would actually have to show chain of custody from the Crown straight to today's present. Don't mind them talk about land registry. Land registry is it's almost like kryptonite to these economic families within the Bahamas. Kryptonite, I tell you. Because land registry then makes available your ability to go and look at the thousands of acres in Andros that has disappeared crown. You'll be able to go look on the other islands and see, and you'll be able to see the families whose names are attached. And chances are there will be a revolution that comes up demanding the return of these ill-gotten gains. So that's why when you hear ministers talk about corruption, and when he wants to set a corruption timetable for 5 years back, he's joking. He's joking. We need an anti-corruption bill that addresses 50 plus years of rape and pillage of the Bahamian economy. That's not what Menace seems to want to represent. Not by virtue of his action. I don't go by what you say. Your action tells me what your intent is. And you have not brought forth any type of environment. The things facing our country is very minor compared to the solutions, which is just huge. Our solutions are so simple. These are not solutions, especially now in the 21st century. But the problem is you'll have individuals talk around it. And this is where I keep asking the question, are you in it? The individuals, say for instance, the so-called fanatics, who will all tell you everything is fine and you just picking on the F&M and whatever else. These are the same fanatics who encouraged me during the last 5 years before the F&M came in to hold the government accountable. And it shows you the duplicitous nature of those individuals. They should not be trusted. Their word should not be taken. Anyone you see that was screaming and shouting for accountability under the Progressive Liberal Party, that has become quiet or have changed and shifted their position since May 10th, should not be trusted. Treat them as liars, deceivers, or whatever definition you want to attach to them. They know they are. So what we have to do is, again, come back to the question, the big picture. What is in it for you and me and our children for the economic development of Grand Bahama? We need a strategy. We need the plans for this. It's been 40 weeks, 40 plus weeks right now since the birth of Hubert Alexander Menace as Prime Minister of the Bahamas. And we have yet to hear anything from the office of the Prime Minister as to the strategy for Grand Bahama. We heard promises concerning the Echo for East. We heard digital Grand Bahama in Freeport, initiating in Freeport, and we heard Echo, and we heard cultural tourism in West Grand Bahama. We don't see any plans. So how is it that you could then claim that you are part of it if you can't see the big picture? You're not. If you notice that what Minister was talking about, I mean, there's thousands of individuals that has been removed off their payroll. The private sector have not been growing. There's been no new economic growth that can replace or put those in. That's 2,500, 3,500, whatever amount of families that has now been thrown into the economic chaos of the Bahamas because there is no new employment opportunities in our country. There's been none created. There's been no environment created for it to happen. There's been no new laws passed that will bring about industry, that will bring about small businesses, that will open a gateway to the economic opportunities that's happening around the world. You have young people every single day in their 20s and their 30s that are revolutionizing and shifting the world. But our young people have no access to that gateway, nor do they have the environment to begin to prepare them for when that opportunity comes around. There's no preparation that's happening within our communities. You have individuals that's just talking. I want to see the big picture. I invite contrasting point of views. I invite you to reach out to me so we could sit down at a table and have this conversation concerning debunking or dismissing anything that I've said. I am open for that discussion. Where are Bahamians in the economic development of the Bahamas in this new global dispensation? I mean, I thought the technology concept was wonderful. It is something that I've been screaming and shouting for 15 years, beginning with the Millennium Development Goals. I remember Jeffrey Lloyd, when I first introduced it on his show in about 2004. Most people didn't even know it existed, even though it was 4 years old. Nothing had happened on the Millennium Development Goals, nothing. 2 terms of various different government. What we did? Do you know the Millennium Development Goals stated that technology is the only, ICT, is the only known tool that could eliminate poverty in 15 years. In 2000, they said that as part of the Millennium Development Goals for the United Nations. And what do? We actually sold BTC. We still have no understanding of how Columbus Communication came about to own part of our infrastructure and eventually selling it for billions of dollars. We have no understanding of how BTC was sold for less than $100 million. And these are questions that have to be answered when you begin to say you want to examine corruption as to what is happening. I can tell you what is happening. Your children are being separated from their inheritance because of your silence. And many of you are taking this bowl of porridge for your inheritance of your children, called jobs for the next 5 years. A little kickback, a little whatever it is that you can have coming from the government that you supported. So, it doesn't matter for the whole country as long as you have your little thing. For me, it's kind of trying to have a last meal on the Titanic after the hole was ripped into it. The chef comes out and prepares this wonderful dinner, and you're just saying, I'm going to get me something to eat. You're on this boat. And you're definitely not being empowered to the position that you can go and relocate and go someplace else. Are you part of their big picture? You're not. Stop fantasizing because you could put on some gang color to say, yeah, I'm part of the FNM, I'm part of the DNA, I'm part of the PLP. Gangs, that's what you become. Where, you just, and the beauty is, right, from our drug trafficking years, you can just take a look at it. Where the drug dealer sits in the big house and everything else, and all of the people sits in the yard and they get jobs and a little dope and a little weed and a little liquor to guard the house, and they once in a while get to drive the boss car and, money, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. That's what you are. Except it's a political party. It's a gang going as with the name of a political party. Just look at the gangs that we have in the war with. You hear that, this boss is locked up, that boss is locked up. And what do the people do? They run around and kill each other for the boss. Why? Because somebody else belongs to another gang. And what the boss do? Enjoy the benefits of these people stealing. I've actually known where people went in the drug game and go and steal 5 and 10 keys. Back then a kilo could be worth as much as $1 million. And they run back to the guy and say, look, man, we stole this last night, boss. And he says, great. They give it to him. And he throws them the keys and says, you could go drive my Mercedes now for the next week or two. He has a couple of dollars, go balling. So they go leave a few $1 million worth of dope that they went, kill somebody for, and even risk being killed. They give it to him so he could pat them on their head. Gang mentality. That's what we have come to. Because all we have to do is look at the small group of individuals that has benefited from the riches of the Bahamas, that has prostituted many of the economics opportunity for us so they can have a little bit. Boss man, the foreigner, boss man, you're going to take care of me, right? I get to drive the car, and these boys around me get to get a little job, a little weed, a little drink, a little whatever. That's how it has been. It's time for us to wake up. We are now in a global competitive environment, and the gang mentality, where it's us against us, will only lead to our destruction, because it's now us against the world. But the world don't want to do anything because we're busy destroying each other. They just have to sit around and wait, sit around and wait, sit around and wait. I sometimes sit and reflect when people say, we have an immigration problem. I says, them guys are pretty smart. Sit in the bush and wait. Behemoths will eventually destroy themselves, and the land will be vacant and empty for the taking. Yeah, you're doing a pretty good job. Nobody has to come in and invade us in the sense of guns and machinery. We will destroy ourselves. We must wake up. Where are we in the big picture of the world? Where are we in the economic empowerment of the Bahamas? Where are we beyond the $2 billion that they hear that you government get in taxes? Where are you beyond the GDP? Do you know where the GDP comes from? The GDP, if it's the profits from the businesses and salaries, that would mean that it has to be extracted from other businesses. That's the profit, and that's the whatever. So guess what? There must be there's a few billions of dollars more than the GDP they announced to you that's being made in and because of the Bahamas. That's the problem. They have not taught you that. We have adjusted the GDP from 8 billion to 11 billion. We run around with the lie with our GDP saying, our national debt is 7.9 billion. We get to rest now because we have adjusted the GDP to 11 billion. So we're no longer going to be at 100%. We can now say we're at 60, 70%. But here's the truth. That GDP debt ratio they told you, they have not included the liabilities that the government has, which could be as much as $3 billion for pension. Michael Alcides did an excellent job at floating it. I don't know how well Peter will do or Marlon Johnson will do. Because essentially, as long as they can continue to pay those pension benefits from the national fund, from the consolidated fund, they don't have to mention it. So what they've done is they've floated this $3 billion debt in the air, and every month they make payments from it. And as long as they keep making those payments, they're not posting that $3 billion worth of liability anywhere. Add that to your $8 billion. Add the $1 billion you owe for BPL, as we call it now. I mean, I know people that are dead and gone that BPL wants you today to pay for because they chose to run an inefficient, ineffective organization. And it's funny that we talk about this whole thing and you say, are you in the big picture? Family, friends, and lovers. It's funny that you could take these companies in monopolies and if you was to say, put some foreign entities or some competent behemoth in this, these organizations could function. The problem is you're putting your family, friends, and lovers that have no concept of how to run these entities. These entities are profitable and billion-dollar companies around the world, and we can't function as a monopoly and make a profit because we're putting incompetence in the place. And then they tell you, oh, we want to privatize it. You know what? We don't need to privatize it. What we have to do is we have to move to convert this to a sovereign wealth fund, and that's the conversation we can have again. Because we need to have our digital infrastructure back in our hands. It's a matter of national security. We need to have energy security. So we need to have the grid back in our hands. That's a national security issue. And so this whole concept of privatizing BTC or BEC or BPL as we call it is garbage. It needs to be separated into a sovereign wealth fund run by individuals that are competent and capable of making decisions that's in the interest of behemoths, where we can go to renewable energy, where we can reduce the costs coming down, where we can put solar panels as part of a strategy on every single roof where homes generate the power that is needed for industries to function. We need a bigger vision. We need to see ourselves in the big picture. But let's come back to Grand Bahama. You know, so many things always on my mind. I try to stay succinct. But when you talk about Grand Bahama, the big picture, Grand Bahama is the big picture for the Bahamas for economic development. I ask you, for those of you that live on New Providence, to please tell me the businesses, the type of industries that you could put on New Providence that will catapult our economy in the direction that we need to go. There is no room. There is no order on New Providence to put anything back on New Providence. But on Grand Bahama, that in Freeport, that was what people often say designed for 250,000 people, and that is before we had the technology we have today to do vertical building. We can probably hold a few million people on as we continue to build out the infrastructure on Freeport, just to give you a perspective. But as it stands right now, Freeport, or Grand Bahama as we know it, is the only island with a ready-to-go template. A ready-to-go template. Remove the Grand Bahama Port Authority, which basically is a hindrance to the growth and development of this island, and come up with a strategy that is necessary so we can put industries. Kill the Oban Energies deal so we can go and put a couple hundred bed and breakfast rooms or a couple thousand bed and breakfast rooms in East Grand Bahama so people could experience the pristineness of the Bahamas. And then we could develop cultural things around them, because we can have the people in East Grand Bahama. Imagine now they're in their pristine environment and they want to experience Grand Bahama. They want to have that cultural experience. What they can't get in East Grand Bahama, because we want to preserve that, let's go down to West Grand Bahama, as promised by Dr. Minnis, to have that cultural experience. They will have to rent cars, they will have to catch taxis, bus, whatever it is, to get there. Grand Bahama. So we could develop that cultural environment down in the West Grand Bahama, where we can have entertainment and clubs and whatever else we needed. And we can have them peppered, not just in the West Grand Bahama, that would be the primary focus, but we can actually have them peppered all the way through Freeport and through East Grand Bahama in a more sustainable way that it doesn't impact the environment up there, for them to experience the Bahamas. But when you talk about the economic growth, we come back to Freeport. We just need to ask ourselves, are we a part of the big picture for the Grand Bahama Port Authority? No. Are we a part of the big picture for Hutchison Whampoa? No. If we were, they would have moved to fix the Alokaya. For many of you may not know, that's part of a deal of how they ended up as part owners of Freeport. They want to create a hospitality product with this grand vision called Alokaya. You know, you have people that have come to me and say, oh, well, the governments, the FNM, when they came back, they interfered and the PLP interfered. And I say to you, no one is interfering with you now. Do what you were obligated to do. Create that hospitality product. You know, it amazes me that you have the Hutchinson Whampoa moves it, and our government has become the real estate agent for the Hutchinson Whampoa, a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar companies. We trying to sell it. We have to add the sweetness with your tax dollars. We have to add the sweetness from the Treasury to sell it. No taxes. We give you this. We give you the seabed. We give you all of these different things. So Hutchinson Whampoa obligation to us for the billions of tax concessions we have given them, we are trying to fulfill their obligations. So what type of madness is that? What we have to do is look to them to see, considering the benefits they have gotten for 25 years, 27 years now, let's look and audit as to what they have done as was called upon based on the $2.5 billion or more dollars that we have given them in tax breaks, plus the loss of revenue from all the other things that may have came from the Treasury. We could look at every single company individually, and instead of a blanket tax break under the Hawkesbury Agreement, give breaks that's commensurate with the benefits to the Bahamian people and the Bahamian economy. It's a simple process. Dr. Minnis, you promised to repeal this tax concessions extended by the Progressive Liberal Party. We would like it to be repealed and not replaced. We would like a strategy be to develop a big picture to include Bahamians. We would like to see it come to fruition. We were still waiting on this strategy that you said that I am paying maybe millions of dollars in the office of the Prime Minister, and I was told that the digital strategy is available. It's finished. We, the Bahamian people, would like to see it. So individuals like myself in the technology arena can see the direction we're going. Let us see the big picture. Please, let's have a conversation as to how I am to be included in the big picture. Because I don't see myself in the big picture. I see the picture being taken. I've seen even the cameras, everything being set up. But I don't see where we've been invited to participate as part of the big picture. Where is this digital strategy for Grand Bahama? Where's the strategy for the Echo East Grand Bahama? Where's the strategy and plans for the cultural type environment in West Grand Bahama? Where's the economic development that is promised for Freeport on Grand Bahama as a whole? Where is the educational plan of free education for all Bahamians that is promised? Grand Bahama is the ideal place to create the environment of an education campus called the University of the Bahamas. You can't name another island that's prepared. You know, young people get to leave home and live in dorms and contribute to the economy, but you can't. In fact, in case you guys may not even know, COB, I've been reliably informed, intend to raise fees in the next semester. That's the government that promised free education is now requiring you to pay by the credits rather than by the class, which in turn is a raising college fees on our students. I don't see our children as part of the big picture. And so we have to ask ourselves, where do we fit into the big picture? We must demand that we have answers to these questions. And we have to stay tuned, because we're going to go back to this Oban issue and the desire to destroy not just Grand Bahama, but the Bahamas with this corrupt deal called Oban Energies, who have now changed their name or sold the rights because they've removed Krieger and Sultar from the corporate entities and inserted another company called Oban Energies Management that involved 3 new players. And they did this two and a half days ago, 3 days now. 3 days ago, in case you guys don't know, Oban Energies changed again. You notice how they keep changing? They scrubbed their website, took people off the website, add people to the website. They announced these are the executives, took the people off from it. You know, they failed to tell you that, in case you guys, especially for you guys with Clico, I want you to know that Mr. Kruger, who we signed this multi-billion-dollar giveaway to, is the same gentleman that separated you Clico people from your monies. $10 million, I think, $10.3 million. Yes, Mr. Krieger is directly related to the collapse of CLECO. Can you imagine that? And what do you do? We reward him with a few $1 billion. Crazy. We got to be mad. Where are Bahamians in the big picture? So when we talk about the thousands of young people throughout the Bahamas and on Grand Bahama that in next May and June will be leaving school, where is the opportunities from them? Are we going to tell them that in 12 years, Oban Energy will, as they destroy the environment, create 250 jobs? Where is the big picture? There's also some things with the GIN deal. The GIN deal, I got some dirty files too, but we're not going to deal with that right now. We have to focus on making sure that Oban Energies doesn't destroy the Bahamas, because it won't make a difference. Now, and when you go back, let me insert this in Oban Energies. When you go back to the previous giveaway of East Grand Bahama with MSC, they themselves now have an option of suing the government for whatever revenues or whatever they would have gained by virtue that their heads of agreement call for the protection and no expansion or no insertion of any additional oil refinery, because their whole concept was to build on the echo type environment of East Grand Bahama. So it seems to be what's so special about an Oban deal that you would kill supposedly another deal that's supposed to provide thousands of jobs and dozens of spin-offs opportunities, all because there was no plan on the table. And so they went and picked up the dirty thing called Oban Energies and began to try to massage it into our economic plan. And so what happens is to them, and this is why you see the stubbornness of the FNM, is because they have no substitute for the Oban industry for the economy. They already lied to S&P, Moody's, IMF, and the central bank. And so they don't have a plan to replace it. 10 months later, you would think, knowing that the Oban was a shitty deal, let's use that expression, you would think 10 months later they would have given birth to something to replace it. No. What we have is just economic degradation that is occurring within our country. People still losing homes, people starving, hunger, children doing without. We must reboot, reload, and rethink. I put to you that the economics of the digital economy that's growing around the world gives the best opportunities for 1,000 to 2,000 of our young people to have access to capital, whether it be $100,000 on the global marketplace. And it may seem like a lot of money, but it isn't. Because we will have a conversation over this weekend or whatever on how do we get young people to insert themselves into the global economy in spite of the resistance by our government. And I'm going to make myself available as a consultant to many of you, and there may be a small fee for my time and resources for you to show that you have some skin in the game on how do you raise that $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 to get into the global marketplace. How do you embrace the global economy in spite of the resistance from your government, in spite of the broken promises by your prime minister of a digital Grand Bahama, access to broadband? We hear plenty of noise, smart city, smart island, smart whatever, but you can't have it if you don't have smart people. And you have seen the Port Authority make announcement after announcement, so we could discount their announcement to hold very little water. But we must demand from our government that they do what is necessary for us to be able to have access for our own economic empowerment without the continued prostitution of future generations for jobs. Our assets. In fact, Brent Simonet in December told us that why are we worried about a $10 billion national debt when the Bahamas assets is well over $3 trillion. I'm sure he was not talking about the Aragonite and the sand and all those things that we will have a conversation of. He may have included the land and other things, but he says that that is what we have. So why would we not leverage the $3 trillion to allow Bahamians to become empowered by entering global marketplaces to create industries within the country? I mean, if you were to allow 2,000 individuals access to $250,000 a year, that's only $500 million a year that's inserted in the economy. If you allow them to get the money from international capital market, imagine an island like Grand Bahama, where we only have 1,000 individuals per year having access to $250,000 for business, for IDES, servicing the Bahamas and the world. That amounts to $150 million a year inserted into Grand Bahamas economy. $250 million a year. 1,000 of our young people being digitally prepared in entrepreneurship and enrichment centers to basically conquer the world utilizing their ideas. No, they want jobs for you. They want the minimum wage 210. They want you to brag that you are part of this great global third GDP that makes just $25,000 or $50,000 a year, when 90% of you will never see it. Never see it. Because there is no room for you in their big picture. I hope we can begin to give you some thought, because I just want to just talk about the reality of where we are as we begin to move, because our conversation is going to be about tendering solutions, tendering ideas and concepts and strategies for us to revitalize Grand Bahama and make it a place so those individuals would consider abandoning the rat hole called New Providence and come and help us build a new Bahamas right here on Grand Bahama. Because we can hold almost the whole population on Grand Bahama if we could move to vertical building and extend this whole concept of Freeport to the entire island. We could very easily absorb New Providence in the job opportunities. And I'm talking about high-paying jobs in the technology field. These are telecommute. You hear me talk about telecommute, where individuals can stay at home and make tremendous salaries with minimal training. We have companies, behemoth companies right here today that does certifications and many of the things that I speak of. But they're not going to be engaged. They want to keep you down, slow, detached, separated from the opportunities. There's never been a greater opportunities for wealth, growth, and development than now in the world, as we transition from the digital economies to a purely digital economy, singular, where you have the Internet of Things, the Internet of People, and the urgency of now, interconnectivities where ideas and data is the new currency. Your ideas today, especially in our young people, is more valuable than money, more valuable than gold, more valuable than the sand and the aragonite we have. That then tells you that the people of the Bahamas is the most valuable asset that we have. We need to build them. We need to focus on them. We need to direct them. We need to provide opportunities for them to improve and engage themselves. We need to be able to do those bed and breakfasts instead of going for this. Imagine the government is going to give maybe a few $100 million away to open the Alokaya on behalf of Hutchins and Whampoa, for who we give millions of dollars a week already in tax concessions. Imagine that we're going to pay for it, as opposed to redirecting that asset as collateral to allow Bahamians to own global businesses, to take advantage of our geolocation, with the waterways, the port, the airport that could be built in East Grand Bahama and other ways. There's no strategy for you to be included in that. What they want to do is come and have the foreigners come in, create the wealth for themselves, and allow you to clean up in and around their businesses, to allow you to certainly be one of the workers, not owners, workers. It's time for us to really own the Bahamas in this new digital dispensation. And essentially, the opportunity for that is there, and it's for now. But it's time for us to demand. And I don't want many of you to think that I'm the only digital person on this island or in the Bahamas. I'm just an activist, an advocate. But there are many others who think like me, who the collaborative effort can allow us to achieve this. If government would just simply pass and facilitate the laws and legislation that is necessary, but it first requires that you become involved and begin to agitate and demand that competence be put to the table to represent your interests. These guys were sitting under the trees and under with us, 10 months ago. Ask yourself, where did the brilliance came from after May 10th? I believe the concept is, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, do it with BS. And that's what we've been getting. Please, Minister of Grand Bahama, 5 MPs that we elected, government of the Bahamas, give us the strategy. Release the digital strategy so at least at minimum I could go into the communities and tell Bahamians how they could be included, how they can involve themselves in that strategy. Release the strategy that you must have had for East, Central, and West Grand Bahama, unless you just utter those statements just out of the top of your head. Echo East, Digital Freeport and Grand Bahama, Cultural West. Let's have it. Green Acklands and all those other different things. Smart city, smart communities, smart island, technology in the parks. I would really love for you, Dr. Minnis, to basically have the new office that I guess we might be paying for now, go back and catalog your promises, going back to 2013, because that's when you begin to make promises, in 2013. Catalog them and see how many of them you have filled so far. I don't even see you beginning to move towards fulfilling any of them. And I would love for you to prove me wrong. I would love to be proven wrong, because I know in being proven wrong, we will have a better Bahamas. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. And I hope as we begin to have these more conversation that you can refer back to these and, do whatever is necessary. And we're just not going to show the faults, but we will also show steps for economic development and economic empowerment to build a better Bahamas, not just for today, but for well into the future. Thank you so much. Love you, Bahamas.